Have you ever imagined yourself seeking shelter in an ancient forest with a wild horse? If not, comment 0 and stay tuned for today's story. In the heart of Diamond National Forest, a man finds himself caught in a sudden, ferocious storm. Struggling to find refuge, he stumbles over wet roots and slippery forest leaves until he discovers a cave hidden beneath a massive rock ledge. But upon entering, he is stunned to face a creature he never expected. A gigantic wild horse. Its eyes glow in the darkness, watching him intently with a wary gaze. What happens next not only tests his survival instincts but also unravels a tale beyond imagination. A strange bond forms, and days later what the horse brings back defies all expectations. Diamond National Forest, with its ethereal beams of light filtering through dense foliage, exudes a sense of mystery and serenity. Moss-covered trails and loose gravel wind their way through babbling brooks, creating a scene straight out of a painting. Keanu Reeves, with a heavy backpack on his shoulders, steps steadily along the famous tablet trail. His boots crunch softly against the damp, decaying leaves beneath. This trip was meant to be a simple overnight hike, a way to escape work pressures and immerse himself in nature. But as evening approaches, the atmosphere shifts from tranquil to ominously quiet. Thick clouds roll in, blanketing the sky and blocking out the light. Thunder rumbles in the distance, a harbinger of an impending storm. Keanu stops, unfolding his map, frowning as he glances at the sky now tinged with murky gray. The first drops of rain seep through his jacket, icy and sharp. The weather forecast had given no hint of a storm, but Keanu knows how unpredictable conditions in the Pacific Northwest can be. The gentle murmur of a nearby stream now roars like a raging torrent, accompanied by winds that shake the tall trees. He calculates quickly. The nearest ranger station is at least 5 miles away, too far to risk under worsening conditions. Scanning his surroundings, he searches desperately for shelter. Then he spots it. A large rock outcrop beneath a cluster of cedar trees, jutting from the hillside like the teeth of a slumbering beast. Below the ledge lies a cave, its dark entrance partially hidden by vines and moss. Keanu hesitates, instincts warning him of potential dangers lurking in the shadows. But with the wind howling louder and the rain now pouring like a waterfall, there's no time for second thoughts. Survival instincts drive him toward the cave. Inside, the air is damp and chilly, tinged with the earthy scent of the forest mingled with stone and moss. The faint light filtering through the entrance barely illuminates the jagged moss-covered walls. Keanu steps deeper into the cave, brushing water off his jacket. He pulls out a flashlight from his backpack, its beam piercing through the cold darkness. The cave isn't very deep, but wide enough to shield him from the raging storm outside. "Looks like I'm spending the night here," he murmurs, setting his backpack down on the damp stone floor. As he crouches to check his supplies, a sound freezes him mid-motion. A deep, rhythmic breathing emanates from the shadows. It's not the wind. He grips the flashlight tightly, its trembling beams sweeping toward the source of the sound. His heart pounds as the silhouette of a wild horse emerges at the back of the cave. Its massive frame, caked with mud and rain, lies motionless on the cold stone floor. The horse's dark brown coat gleams under the flashlight, its flanks heaving with labored breaths. Its black eyes glint in the light, staring directly at Keanu. Although it isn't as dangerous as a bear or wolf, the horse's presence still fills Keanu with unease. He takes a few cautious steps back, maintaining distance. The horse's coat is matted with mud, and its right shoulder bears a deep wound. Dried blood mixed with dirt forms dark patches on its body. The horse doesn't appear aggressive. It simply lies there, exhausted, its eyes heavy with fatigue. Keanu feels his heartbeat quicken. He realizes the animal is gravely injured. The two remain still, neither making a move, as if contemplating their next actions. Running away seems futile, but staying carries risks. Yet the horse's vulnerability tugs at something within him, making it hard to turn away. Outside the cave, the storm grew fiercer, the sound of rain pouring down mingling with the howling wind, as if intent on erasing all sense of reason. "Crazy," Keanu whispered, his hands trembling as he opened his backpack and retrieved a small first aid kit. He knew he couldn't fully heal the wound, but doing something was better than doing nothing. He crouched low, gripping the flashlight tightly, taking cautious steps toward the horse. It snorted, its ears twitching as it acknowledged his presence. "It's okay, buddy," Keanu murmured, his voice blending into the storm. He pulled out a disinfectant wipe, the sharp smell of chemicals cutting through the damp air. As the wipe touched the wound, the horse flinched, its nostrils flaring with a soft whinny. Keanu paused, waiting for its reaction, but it didn't move further. Its large black eyes remained fixed on him, as though understanding he meant no harm. Carefully and slowly, Keanu cleaned the wound. Each time his hand touched it, the horse shifted slightly but didn't resist. When the wound was clean, Keanu took gauze, wrapped it around its shoulder, and secured it with a firm knot. The task completed, he stepped back a little, feeling his body sag under the weight of exhaustion. He sat against the cave wall and pulled a protein bar from his backpack, a ready-made meal he'd packed for the trip. The rustling of the wrapper echoed softly in the stillness. Immediately, the horse's ears twitched, and its eyes opened again. Keanu paused, the bar frozen mid-air, his gaze locked on the massive creature before him. The horse raised its head slightly, nostrils flaring as it caught the scent of the food. It let out a soft huff before resting its head back down on the moss-covered ground. "You're not going to make this easy, are you?" Keanu muttered, his voice tinged with fatigue. He pulled a pack of beef jerky from his jacket pocket, took a small bite and chewed slowly, trying to think. The storm outside had calmed, but the thought of leaving, abandoning the injured wild horse in this state, gnawed at him. Keanu remembered his time working at wildlife rehabilitation centers during past photography trips. Maybe, if he reached the ranger station, someone could help the horse, but the nearest station was still hours away on foot, and there was no guarantee the horse would still be here or alive when help arrived. He stood up slowly, carefully, and began packing his belongings. The horse opened its eyes to watch him, its gaze weary but steady. A pang of guilt hit him as he slung the backpack over his shoulder. "I've done what I can," he told himself, trying to feel reassured. "Nature will take care of the rest." But as he moved toward the cave's entrance, the horse let out a low, rasping sound, half a call, half a sigh. The sound stopped him in his tracks. He turned, heart pounding. The horse hadn't moved, but its eyes were wide open now, fixed on him with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. It wasn't threatening. It was something else. A plea, or perhaps a warning. Keanu wasn't sure. He sighed, running a hand through his damp hair. All right, he muttered, setting his backpack down and stepping closer to the horse, cautiously. He stopped a few feet away, crouching to inspect the wound on its foreleg. The injury was deeper than he'd thought. The blood had clotted, but the edges were swollen and bright red, clear signs of infection. Keanu knelt, opened the first aid kit and rummaged through it. At the bottom, he found a small tube of antibiotic ointment, just enough to apply to the wound. Gently, he spread the ointment, murmuring reassurances as the horse shifted and let out a short snort. "You're tougher than I thought, that's for sure," Keanu said softly, attempting a small smile. "But you've got to pull through this, okay?" The horse exhaled deeply, a low sound that felt like tired agreement. Keanu sat back, leaning against the cold rock wall. Exhaustion washed over him, but he couldn't bring himself to leave just yet. The next morning, the forest outside the cave was brimming with life. Birds chirped melodiously in the trees, mingling with the soft gurgling of a nearby stream, creating a perfect symphony of nature. The air, fresh from the storm, carried the scent of damp earth and fresh grass. Keanu stepped out of the cave, shielding his eyes as sunlight filtered through the dense canopy. The serenity of the forest was a stark contrast to the chaos of the night before. He glanced back at the cave, half expecting the horse to follow, but the entrance remained shrouded in shadow. Deciding to explore briefly, he headed to the small stream he'd noticed the day before. Kneeling by the edge, he splashed cold water on his face. The chill jolted him awake. As he leaned down to refill his water bottle, his eyes caught something unusual. Small hoofprints etched into the damp earth. The tracks, sharp and distinct, didn't belong to the large horse in the cave. They were much smaller, perhaps a foal's. A shiver ran down Keanu's spine as he realized the tracks led toward the cave. He returned to the cave's entrance, his steps slower and more deliberate. The mare still lay there, her eyes half closed, her breathing steady. But now he couldn't shake the thought. Was she truly alone in the darkness? When returning to the cave's entrance, Keanu stopped, his gaze landing on the large horse lying motionless in the shadows. Its eyes were half closed, its breathing steady, as if resting. The air inside the cave was cool, but there was an invisible tension hanging in the atmosphere. Keanu stepped inside, his movements deliberate and gentle, as though afraid to disturb the quiet space. His senses were heightened, alert to any other movement in the darkness. But there was nothing. Even so, the thought that another creature might be nearby made his heart race. Keanu let himself sink down, leaning against the cool stone wall. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, he pulled out his camera, his fingers brushing it as if seeking the comfort of familiarity. Photography was Keanu's language, his way of connecting with the world. And even here, where beauty and danger intertwined, he felt the urge to capture something meaningful. The soft light from the cave entrance illuminated the horse, creating an almost surreal scene. He raised the lens, adjusted the focus, and the shutter clicked softly. When he reviewed the photo, an odd sense of calm washed over him. This wasn't just an animal. It was a story, a fragment of wilderness he was witnessing. He didn't know how long he would stay or what awaited him, but in this moment, Keanu felt he was exactly where he needed to be. As the first rays of morning light crept through the cave's entrance, Keanu shifted slightly, his legs numb from hours of stillness. He bent down to rummage through his bag for something to eat, but just then, a faint sound, almost imperceptible, came from outside the cave. Every sense in Keanu sprang to attention. Slowly he turned his head toward the sound, his heart pounding in his chest. Through the golden sunlight filtering through the leaves, he caught a glimpse of a small shadow moving. His breath hitched as he realized it was a smaller horse, a foal. Its sleek brown coat shimmered in the morning light, still fluffy in a way that betrayed its youth, yet full of potential to grow strong. The foal paused at the edge of the clearing, its pointed ears swiveling at every sound. It sniffed the air with its small nose, its steps slow and cautious. Keanu froze, not daring to move. He glanced quickly at the mare. It remained still, its breathing steady. Keanu's gaze returned to the foal, now standing at the edge of the forest, its curious eyes fixed on the cave. Perhaps it was the mare's offspring, but that also meant greater risks. If the foal decided to enter, the fragile balance in the cave could shatter. A protective mother and an inexperienced foal. This was a recipe for potential disaster. The foal slowly stepped closer, its small hooves lightly tapping the dry leaves. Keanu instinctively tightened his grip on the camera, as though it could shield him from whatever was about to unfold. The foal edged nearer, its nose grazing the ground, sniffing at unfamiliar scents. Suddenly, a low sound came from the shadows. Not a warning, but a soft groan. Keanu's head whipped around. The mare had lifted its head, its deep dark eyes fixed on the foal. It was a slow, gentle sound, like a beckoning call. The foal paused, tilting its head, seemingly trying to decipher the message. After a moment's hesitation, it took another step, then another, until it stood right at the threshold. The mare let out another soft groan, and the foal responded with a weak neigh. Its small body quivered with uncertainty, but at last it stepped across the threshold, moving toward its mother. Once close enough, the foal nuzzled its head against the uninjured side of its mother, letting out a soft, almost sorrowful sigh. The mare lowered its head, touching its muzzle gently to the foal's forehead, as though comforting it. Keanu felt his chest tighten, his heartbeat yet to slow. He had witnessed the entire scene, both surreal and mesmerizing. The interaction between the two animals wasn't just instinctive, but seemed like a sacred moment of the wild. The foal pressed closer, its sleek brown coat contrasting with the mare's imposing but protective form. Keanu exhaled as though he had just witnessed something precious, a fragment of the primal world, where maternal love and resilience triumphed over all. The foal, with its bright, curious eyes, stared intently at the bandage on its mother's shoulder. Its small, damp nose nudged the edge of the bandage, as if trying to understand what had happened. The mare's reaction wasn't anger. Instead, it let out a small, soft whinny, a gentle warning. Then, with a gesture both firm and full of love, it used its large foreleg to nudge the foal away, as if teaching it not to be overly curious. Keanu watched quietly, his gaze fixed on the pair. His mind swirled with unspoken questions. How had the foal managed to follow its mother through the storm? How many dangers had it overcome to get here? And more importantly, how long would they stay? Time passed slowly, and with each fleeting moment, Keanu came to an undeniable realization. He couldn't stay here forever. The food and water supplies were nearly depleted, and being so close to the horses, especially with the mare still injured, was a risk he couldn't ignore. Yet the thought of leaving them behind weighed heavily on his heart. Keanu glanced at his watch. The sun was still high, and there was enough daylight to guide him out of the dense forest. He sighed, running a hesitant hand through his hair. The two horses seemed calm again. The foal huddled close to its mother, both appearing to be in a fragile state of rest. Rising to his feet, Keanu tried not to make any sudden movements that might startle them. The backpack on his shoulders felt heavier, not just from its contents but from the emotional burden he carried. As he began walking, he turned back for one last look at the two horses. The sight of them peacefully together brought him a sense of solace, but it also tugged painfully at his heart. "I'll come back," he whispered, his voice as soft as a breath, unsure if he was speaking to them or reassuring himself. Stepping out of the shadowy cave, Keanu was enveloped by the brilliance of sunlight. Tall trees swayed gently in the breeze, sunlight streaming through their leaves to create dynamic patterns on the forest floor. The sense of pine resin and damp earth mingled with the fresh post-storm air. The ground beneath his feet was still wet, muddy tracks compressing under his boots, leaving faint imprints on the faint trail. Keanu adjusted the straps of his backpack, feeling its weight pull on his shoulders with every step. The path ahead led deeper into the forest, leaving the cave and the mare and foal behind, now seemingly a distant memory, though he'd only left them moments ago. The image of the mare, strong but exhausted, and her peculiar gesture toward the dry grass earlier lingered in his mind like an unsolved riddle. A part of him felt as though he had intruded on something sacred, while another part was drawn to the mysteries of the wild. But the pressing concerns of the journey ahead soon pulled him back to reality. The trail, ravaged by the storm, had become a labyrinth. Broken branches blocked his way, and mud made each step a struggle. Keanu paused to check his map, but even it was of little help in these conditions. The forest's post-storm silence felt strange, not oppressive but eerily peaceful, punctuated only by the rustle of leaves or a distant bird call. As he stepped over a patch of mud, Keanu suddenly slipped. He grabbed onto a nearby tree, its rough bark scraping his palm. Muttering under his breath, he straightened and steadied his breathing. Ahead, the trail narrowed, winding through moss-covered rocks and fallen logs. His eyes scanned the ground, searching for signs of wildlife. Part of him hoped to avoid predators like snow leopards or wolves. Another part couldn't stop thinking about the foal's fragile but curious gaze as he left. The thought of leaving the mare and foal behind in the cave's shadow unsettled him deeply. But he knew his priority was to reach the ranger station. Rounding a bend in the trail, Keanu's eyes caught an unusual disturbance on the ground. Large footprints, pressed deep into the damp soil. The edges were sharp, indicating they were fresh. His heart began to race. These weren't the tracks of the horses he'd just left. They were larger, heavier, and carried an ominous aura. He crouched, tracing his fingers over the deep grooves left by the hoof-like prints, feeling their sharp contours. The tracks led back toward the cave. A wave of unease washed over Keanu, as though every cell in his body was warning him of imminent danger. If the tracks belonged to a predator, such as a wolf, the mare and foal would be in grave peril. Keanu shot to his feet, his gaze darting through the dense forest, searching for any sign of movement. But the woods remained unnervingly still, the swaying treetops and whispering breeze seeming to hold their breath. The silence was no longer comforting. It felt heavy, oppressive, laden with foreboding. Keanu hesitated, his hands clenched into fists. Should he return to the cave immediately to check on the horses, or press on to the ranger station for help? Instinct screamed at him not to leave the mare and foal unprotected, but logic reminded him that they needed assistance, and time was their greatest enemy. Determination set Keanu's face in a resolute expression. If he could reach the ranger station quickly and return before nightfall, things might still be okay. But the thought of leaving, abandoning them alone and vulnerable for even a few hours, cut through his mind like a blade. He took a deep breath, his gaze darkening with resolve, and began to move, each step charged with the urgency of fear. As the sun tilted low in the sky, Keanu felt every muscle in his legs burning. The steep inclines and rugged terrain pushed his limits. He pushed through dense thickets, leaving scratches on his jacket sleeves from sharp branches. The trail had completely disappeared, forcing him to rely on his compass and the faint memory of the map etched in his mind. Each step grew heavier, his legs nearly rebelling against the exhaustion they endured. Yet Keanu didn't stop. Every passing moment, he imagined the wary eyes of the mother horse and the fragility of the foal, drawing strength from the thought. Finally, he emerged from the forest's shadowy depths into a sunlit clearing. The brilliance of the sunlight was a stark contrast to the stifling darkness of the canopy he'd just left behind. Shielding his eyes from the glare, he scanned the open space quickly. In the distance, a small wooden structure came into view, standing isolated against a backdrop of towering pines, a beacon of hope. His heart swelled with relief as he recognized the ranger station. The weight of his anxiety lifted, like a refreshing stream coursing through his weary body. Keanu quickened his pace, almost breaking into a run for the final stretch. Reaching the door, he knocked forcefully on the rough wood, the sound echoing in the stillness. His knuckles throbbed from the impact against the solid surface. "Hello?" he called out, his voice hoarse with fatigue. "Is anyone here?" For a moment silence enveloped the space, and Keanu's heart clenched with the fear that he might be too late. But then a creaking sound broke the stillness as the door slowly opened. A ranger appeared, a middle-aged woman with a sun-weathered face, sharp eyes, and a calm demeanor honed through years of wilderness experience. "Looks like you've had quite a journey," she said, her tone tinged with curiosity and caution. She stepped back, opening the door wider to let Keanu enter. The cool air inside the ranger station brushed against his skin, a soothing balm to his exhaustion. But it wasn't long before Keanu, driven by urgency, began to relay the situation. His eyes carried the weight of his distress, as though every second wasted was a potential death sentence for the lives awaiting him in the forest. Keanu entered the room, his expression urgent, and launched into his story with hurried intensity. as if every moment that slipped by was a loss. He described the storm, the injured mare, and his fear that it might succumb to danger if he didn't return in time. The ranger, Tracy, listened intently, her brows knitting together as she absorbed the critical details. "You're saying the horse is still alive?" Tracy asked, her tone a mix of skepticism and surprise. "Yes," Keanu replied, his eyes brimming with anxiety. "I've done everything I could to dress the wound, but I don't know how long it can hold." Tracy nodded and reached for the radio on her desk. "You did the right thing coming here. We have a wildlife recovery team stationed nearby. I'll call them now, and we'll head back with them." A wave of relief washed over Keanu, but it was fleeting, replaced quickly by unease. He glanced out the window, his mind conjuring images of the solitary mare in the forest, battling its injury and the lurking dangers of the wild. While Tracy contacted the recovery team, Keanu paced the small room, each step charged with nervous energy. "If a predator's already caught its scent," he said, his voice low and pensive, "we might not have much time." Tracy met his gaze, her eyes filled with determination. "The team will get here as fast as they can," she assured him. "But you're right. This is a race against time." The minutes stretched endlessly. When the sound of an engine finally broke the silence, Keanu rushed to the window. A rugged, mud-spattered pickup truck pulled into the ranger station's clearing. Two figures stepped out, both clad in thick jackets and sturdy boots. Their swift movements and focused expressions told Keanu they were seasoned wildlife specialists. "Let's go," Tracy said, grabbing her gear and leading the way outside. Keanu followed closely, his heart pounding as he relayed details of the cave's location. The group set out quickly, undeterred by the rough terrain and the fading daylight, leaving long shadows dancing across the forest floor. The forest's usual tranquility now carried an air of urgency, mirroring Keanu's growing dread. The two specialists, Clinton, a tall, composed man, and Candy, a woman with sharp eyes and decisive movements, navigated the wilderness with remarkable efficiency. The faint clinks of their equipment, ropes, tranquilizers, and medical supplies, melded with the crunch of dry leaves underfoot. Their presence offered Keanu some comfort, but the fear gripping him refused to relent. He knew all too well that time was not on their side. The trail became slick with mud and debris from the earlier storm. Tracy occasionally paused, her sharp eyes scanning the ground and surrounding foliage. "Nothing new," she murmured, though her tone betrayed her unease. Keanu couldn't stop thinking about the mare. He recalled its frail appearance when he left, the swollen wound, labored breathing, and heart-wrenching look of endurance in its eyes. He wondered if it was still alive or if it had succumbed to its injuries. And the foal, so tiny and fragile, could it possibly survive the perils of the forest teeming with dangers? The image of the large hoofprints Keanu had spotted earlier still haunted him. They clearly belonged to a larger, heavier stallion, and its direction was unmistakable, toward the cave where the mare and foal were hiding. As they approached the stream where Keanu had first seen the tracks, he stopped and pointed at the disturbed ground. "This is where I saw them," he said, his voice hoarse with tension. Clinton knelt down, his gloved fingers tracing the edge of a hoofprint. "Wild horse," he said after a few moments of inspection. "A big one. These tracks are fresh, likely from this morning." Candy, scanning the surroundings, narrowed her eyes slightly. "It might have caught the scent of the injured mare or the foal," she remarked. "If it's a stallion, it might see the foal as a territorial intruder." The thought made Keanu shiver. He knew all too well that wild stallions could be extremely aggressive, especially toward young ones not of their herd. The mare, injured as she was, would stand no chance if attacked. Tracy adjusted the strap of her tranquilizer gun, her determined gaze fixed on the trail ahead. "We need to move faster," she said. The group immediately quickened their pace, their steps faster but no less cautious, determined to reach the cave before it was too late. The sun sank lower behind the horizon, the soft orange-red glow fading into deep blue as the forest grew darker, enveloped in a mysterious shroud. Towering trees closed in above, forming a natural canopy that seemed to cut Keanu and the group off from the outside world. He felt his muscles burning, his legs heavy from the effort, but each step brought him closer to the cave, closer to the truth awaiting them. When they finally reached the rocky outcrop, Keanu's heart clenched. The cave entrance loomed like a massive black maw, swallowing all light. The air inside was cold, eerily silent, revealing nothing about what lay within. The group paused, panting after the grueling uphill trek, sweat beading on their skin despite the falling temperature. "Stay back," Tracy ordered, her tone firm yet reassuring. She motioned for Clinton and Candy to take position, their tranquilizer rifles ready. Keanu stepped back, trying to steady his racing heart, his eyes never leaving the cave. Clinton and Candy moved with practiced precision. Their steps were light and cautious, not disturbing the stillness. Clinton raised a flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness, illuminating the damp, jagged floor of the cave. The cold, rough stone walls added to the oppressive atmosphere. But there was no sign of the horses. "They're not here," Clinton whispered, his voice barely audible. A chill ran down Keanu's spine. "They were here this morning," he protested, his tone near desperation. "The mare was too weak to go far." Tracy squinted, her sharp gaze scanning the area. "If they've moved, they can't be far," she said confidently. "We need to find their trail." The group spread out, flashlight beams sweeping across the forest floor, casting flickering light amidst the growing shadows. Leaves and rocks showed subtle disturbances, their soft steps the only sounds. Keanu couldn't shake the rising anxiety in his chest as his eyes combed every corner. Then he saw it, a small dark red streak on a moss-covered rock. "Over here!" he called out, his voice trembling. The others quickly gathered. Candy knelt, her gloved hand hovering over the bloodstain. "The blood is fresh," she confirmed, her gaze sharp, "and it's leading somewhere." She pointed toward a thicket of dense bushes where the vegetation was noticeably disturbed. Keanu followed her direction, his heart sinking as he realized the trail didn't just lead away from the cave. It extended downhill toward the rushing river. The sound of water grew louder, mingling with the ominous ambiance of the darkening forest, creating a tense, unsettling soundtrack. "Move!" Tracy commanded, her voice firm and decisive. The group followed the trail, flashlight beams illuminating the fresh signs. The forest closed in around them, oppressive as the last light of day faded. The river's roar grew louder, pulling Keanu closer to whatever awaited him. Suddenly, a piercing cry tore through the night, shattering the silence. Keanu froze, his blood running cold. The shrill neigh of a foal echoed through the forest, followed by a low, threatening whinny. The group froze, their eyes snapping to the direction of the sound. Tracy raised her hand, signaling for silence. The neigh came again, louder, closer. "It's right nearby," Clinton whispered, his gaze taut with tension. Tracy nodded, gripping her tranquilizer rifle tightly. "Stay behind me," she ordered, her voice steady, yet calm. They moved forward cautiously, each step deliberate, their breaths controlled to avoid adding to the tension. As they reached a small clearing, the scene that unfolded left them all stunned. The mare stood in the center, her large frame sagging, her forelegs slightly bent as though shielding the small foal beside her. Opposite them was a wild stallion, its sleek black coat glinting and cold, sharp eyes radiating a dominant will. The mare neighed a warning, but her movements were slow, clearly exhausted. The stallion took a step forward, its posture menacing, asserting its authority. Keanu felt his breath catch as he witnessed the scene. The mare was trying to hold her ground, but it was evident she couldn't last long. The foal huddled close to her, its small body trembling, seeking protection. "Clinton, get ready," Tracy ordered, her voice firm. Clinton raised the tranquilizer gun, aiming carefully. Keanu held his breath, the world around him seeming to pause. As the dart flew through the air, time itself felt suspended. The dart struck the stallion's shoulder. It let out a furious neigh, rearing up into the air, but it quickly lost balance and collapsed to the ground. Its massive body struggled briefly before going still, its heavy breathing gradually evening out as the tranquilizer took effect. The mare neighed defensively, her wary eyes fixed on the group of humans before her. Though trembling from exhaustion, she didn't move, standing as a living shield before her foal. Keanu saw something in the mare's gaze stronger than fear, an unwavering determination to protect life. The experts moved swiftly but cautiously, each step meticulously calculated. Tracy's sharp eyes scanned the bushes and tree canopy, missing nothing. Every sound of the forest, the rustling leaves, the whispering wind, was carefully analyzed for signs of another threat. Keanu stood silently at the edge of the clearing, his hands clenched tightly as though to suppress his trembling. His heart was still pounding, the remnants of the tense moments lingering. He had come to this forest seeking solitude, a source of inspiration for his photography. But now he realized he had found something far greater. A profound and primal connection to the wild. A vivid reminder of the enduring bond between living beings. The mare's gaze met his again. In her deep, round eyes there was exhaustion, but also resilience and a hint of deliberation. In that fleeting moment, Keanu felt the chaos around him fade. All that remained was an unspoken understanding between him and the wild creature before him, a fragile yet significant bond. Then the moment passed. The clearing grew quieter as the stallion's heavy, drugged breathing softened, blending into the steady rhythm of the forest. The mare remained motionless, her large body trembling slightly from exhaustion. Her eyes stayed locked on the group of humans, seemingly weighing their intentions, trying to decide if they were a threat. The small foal nestled against its mother, its tiny form strikingly vulnerable within her protective circle. Keanu felt a lump rise in his throat as his gaze met the mare's. It wasn't exactly trust, at least, not yet. But it was no longer hostility either. For a wild animal, this silent acceptance was a significant concession, and Keanu understood its weight. "Move carefully," Candy whispered to the group, her voice soft but commanding. "We need to approach and treat her wounds without scaring her." Tracy nodded, then turned to Keanu. "You've done your part," she said, her tone calm but firm. "Let us handle it from here." Keanu remained rooted, his eyes fixed on the mare. Every nerve in his body seemed attuned to the creature. A powerful urge compelled him to stay, not just out of concern, but because of a connection he couldn't explain. He felt he had become a part of their story. Candy moved closer slowly, her hands raised to show she meant no harm. The mare twitched her ears and tossed her head warily, letting out a low, defensive neigh, not entirely threatening, but more of a reminder that she was still vigilant. "It's okay, girl," Candy murmured, her voice steady and soothing. "We're here to help." The foal peeked out from behind its mother, its large, round eyes a mix of fear and curiosity. It looked at Candy, then back at Keanu, as if trying to understand the intentions of these strange humans. Keanu's chest tightened. He felt an overwhelming urge to act, but he knew any sudden movement could shatter the delicate situation. Tracy stepped closer, whispering to Keanu, "She's not sure about us yet. If we push her, she might bolt, or worse, attack. We need her to feel we're not a threat." Keanu took a deep breath before replying, his voice quiet but resolute. "What if I try?" Tracy turned to him, her brows furrowing. "You've taken enough risks, Keanu. These animals are unpredictable." "I know," Keanu replied, striving to keep his tone calm. "But I was with her before. I cleaned her wound and she let me. Maybe she'll remember me." Tracy studied him for a long moment, then finally sighed. "All right, but move very slowly and don't make any gestures that might alarm her." Keanu nodded, swallowing hard. He took a step toward the mare, then another, his body tense but his hands open to appear non-threatening. The mare's eyes stayed fixed on him. She let out a low neigh, but she neither advanced nor retreated. As Keanu spoke softly, his voice blending with the forest's sounds, he said, "I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to help." The mare drew a deep breath, her massive head dipping slightly as if in deliberation. A wheezing exhale came from her nostrils, and Keanu could clearly see the wound on her shoulder, a stark reminder of her struggles. He stopped, keeping a respectful distance, but the mare and her foal's gaze seemed to convey something beyond words. Keanu slowly reached into his coat pocket, feeling the layers of fabric brush against his hand as he searched for a packet of beef jerky. His hand trembled slightly, not out of fear, but because he knew any clumsy movement could alert the mare. He carefully pulled out the packet, so gentle that it made almost no sound. The rustling of the paper was painstakingly slow. Keanu noticed the mare's ears twitch slightly, its large body tensing as if ready to defend itself. But it didn't move. Its gaze remained fixed on him. Bending down, Keanu cautiously placed the packet of beef jerky on the leaf-strewn ground. He stepped back a few paces, his footsteps deliberate, avoiding any branches that might crack underfoot. Raising his hands with palms open, a universal sign of peace, he stood still, waiting for the mare's reaction. It took a deep breath, its wide nostrils flaring as it lowered its head to sniff the packet. A tense silence hung in the air for a moment. Then it picked up the food with its strong teeth, chewing slowly. The foal beside it, curious, stepped closer, its small muzzle sniffing at the crumbs left on the ground. Keanu let out a quiet sigh of relief, murmuring to himself, "That's it." While the mare was preoccupied with its meal, Candy and Clinton began to move in. Both crouched low, each step measured and precise. Candy gently removed the damp bandage from the mare's shoulder and replaced it with a clean dressing. The mare let out a low groan, turning its head to look, its eyes filled with discomfort. But instead of attacking, it merely grumbled, a warning rather than a threat. "The wound's infected," Clinton observed, his voice low, almost a whisper. "But it's manageable. We'll need antibiotics to stop it from spreading. We could use a sedative if necessary, but let's not push her too far for now," Candy said, her hands still carefully securing the bandage on the mare's shoulder. The mare's gaze shifted back to Keanu. In the dim light of dusk, he could see the deep brown of its eyes. It wasn't full trust, but neither was it hostility. There was a quiet acknowledgement between them, as if the mare understood he meant no harm. As the group finished their work, the sunlight began to fade. The golden rays bathed the clearing, highlighting the gentle rustle of bushes in the evening breeze. The chirping of crickets blended with the distant call of an owl. "We need to decide our next steps," Tracy broke the silence. "We can monitor them for a while longer, but we can't stay here forever." Keanu stood still for a moment before speaking, his voice steady and firm. "I'll stay." All eyes turned to him. Surprise was evident on their faces, mixed with a hint of concern. "I'll set up camp nearby," he continued, "just to make sure they're okay. You can check back in a day or two." Tracy scrutinized him, doubt clear in her eyes. "Are you sure? This could be dangerous." Keanu nodded. "I'm sure. I can't leave them now." After a brief hesitation, Tracy sighed and nodded. "All right, but stay in contact. We'll leave you a radio." Candy and Clinton quietly packed essential supplies, a small tent, a first aid kit, and enough food and water for a few days. As they prepared to leave, Keanu turned to look at the mare and her foal. The foal was curled up beside its mother, its tiny body rising and falling with steady breaths. The mare remained alert, her tired eyes glimmering with resilience as she looked at Keanu. In that moment, Keanu felt something shift deep within him. He was no longer just an observer. He was part of this story, a fragile thread connecting humanity and nature. As the group departed, darkness slowly enveloped the forest. Keanu set up his tent at a safe distance from the clearing, close enough to observe without disturbing the horses. The sounds of crickets, rustling leaves, and the faint whisper of the wind became the backdrop to the forest's quiet stillness. Sitting at the entrance of his tent, flashlight dimly glowing, Keanu kept his eyes on the resting mare and foal. His mind drifted to the events that had unfolded. What had started as a photography trip had brought him here, and now he realized he wasn't just a photographer. He was a protector, a witness to the resilience of nature. The next morning, Keanu was awakened by a soft rustling sound outside. Sitting up, he took a deep breath of the crisp morning air and peeked out of the tent. Before him, the mare had risen, its tall frame steady in the pale light of dawn. Though its movements were slow, each step it took was deliberate. Behind it, the foal trotted on small legs, its tiny hooves tapping lightly against the ground as it tried to keep up with its mother. The pair made their way toward a nearby stream. Keanu quietly observed as the mare slowly lowered her head, dipping her muzzle into the clear blue water. Her injured shoulder leaned slightly, and every movement seemed like an immense challenge. Yet the mare's eyes remained sharp and filled with determination. The foal, with its innocent mimicry, also bent its head to drink, its small muzzle lightly touching the cool stream. The sight left Keanu awestruck. Despite her injury, the mare persisted in caring for her offspring, a vivid symbol of strength and maternal love in the natural world. All that day, Keanu spent his time observing the mother and foal from a distance. He meticulously documented and photographed every moment. The curious foal explored the open field, its tiny legs kicking up dry leaves as it sniffed everything around. The mare, though in need of rest to recover her strength, kept her eyes on her foal's every move, like a devoted guardian. Over the next few days, Keanu noticed a change in the mare's behavior. Her steps became lighter and more graceful, her posture relaxed, and her eyes held a sense of calm. The antibiotics and care had begun to take effect, bringing her renewed vitality. The sight ignited cautious hope within Keanu. On the second night, as moonlight filtered through the dense canopy, Keanu realized that his relationship with the mare and her foal was shifting. The mare no longer neighed in alarm whenever she spotted him in her line of sight. The foal, encouraged by its mother's calmness, ventured closer to where Keanu sat. Its small nose twitched as it sniffed the air, its wide eyes gazing at Keanu with innocent curiosity. Keanu remained motionless, letting the foal decide how close to approach. After a while, it retreated and returned to its mother. Though brief, the moment was profound, a small step toward an unspoken understanding between man and the wild. In the days that followed, the mare continued to recover. She began moving more confidently, foraging for food among nearby bushes. The foal trailed closely, learning to observe and imitate its mother in every activity. Keanu felt a wave of pride and relief. They were healing, regaining their strength. On the fourth day, Tracy and the team returned to check on the mare and foal's condition. They were pleased to see that the mare was strong enough to continue living in the wild. They also acknowledged that Keanu's presence might have helped the mare remain calm during this critical recovery period. The next morning, under the radiant glow of dawn, the mare stood at the edge of the clearing. The foal stood close beside her, eagerly lifting its head in imitation. The mare sniffed the air and let out a soft neigh. Keanu stood at a distance, silently watching. His throat tightened. He knew the moment of parting had arrived. The pair slowly made their way toward the forest. Their forms gradually disappeared into the shadows of the dense trees. The foal paused once, its large eyes glancing back at Keanu. That gaze felt like a quiet but meaningful farewell before it vanished into the woods. Keanu stood there for a long time, the silence of the forest enveloping him. A deep sense of peace filled his chest. He had done everything he could, and the pair had survived because of it. Their lives would continue, shaped by the same wilderness that had brought them together. Returning to his cabin on the edge of the Diamond National Forest, everything felt different. The photos he had taken, the mare's determination, the foal's carefree curiosity, the raw beauty of their habitat, were more than just images. They were a story, a testament to the delicate bond between humans and nature. Keanu began sharing his story. Building on his foundation as a photographer, he became an advocate for wildlife conservation. His work spread, sparking lively discussions about coexistence and humanity's role in protecting the natural world. Though he would never see the mare and foal again, Keanu knew they were out there, living free and strong in the vast forest. A testament to resilience and the enduring beauty of the wild. This story is not just about Keanu Reeves and a mare with her foal in the deep forest, but also a reminder of the profound connection between humans and nature. If this story has touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your feelings and experiences with the natural world. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any stories about the wonders of the wild. Share this video with your friends and family to spread the message of conservation and protecting the natural world. Thank you for following this journey. Remember, every small action you take can make a big difference in preserving our planet. See you in the next story.